जो भी हो तू मेरी रहना. The day I get as popular as, say, a Badshah or someone, and I won't be able to just walk on the streets, you know, that I wouldn't like to be in that position, actually.
Yeah.
What started happening is also, it's only really the singers, who are signed to them, barring some exceptions now and then, but those are very few. Those are the people who get the big songs in the film. Very notorious labels, or people have also gone so far as to they just buy view counts, and they'll also buy entire click farms. They have time to kind of add comments to kind of like the videos.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the Flipside. Today we have a really interesting conversation with none other than Mr. Nikhil D'souza. Nikhil is someone who brings his really unique and really beautiful take on guitar pop and rock to the worlds of Bollywood music as well as the Indian independent music scene. He's the voice behind songs like Sham, Mere Bina and Vaaste, and he's featured on Rolling Stone India as well as MTV's Coke Studio. Today we spoke about his journey as a musician, his creative process. He also shed some light on some secrets about the Indian and Bollywood music industry, which we found quite eye-opening. So if you're someone who's a fan of Nikhil D'souza, if you're someone who's looking to break into Bollywood music or the independent Indian music scene, or if you're someone who just wants to understand more about the music industry as a whole, then this conversation is for you. Stay tuned till the very end. Without further ado, let's begin our podcast.
So from covering his songs, Sham and Mere Bina, to having him on my podcast today, it's indeed a very special day for me. Thank you for doing this, Nikhil. How are you doing?
Doing fine, Karan. Thanks. Refreshed after like a few days of sleep. We've been touring pretty incessantly.
Yeah.
So, it's nice to kind of have your feet back on the ground, really.
Yeah.
And this is kind of an experience where we'd like you to just take that step back and maybe reflect on your journey right from the start. And in fact, what we like to do to kick things off today is a segment we like to call Journey of 5. So essentially what I'll be doing now is I'll be sharing with you either 5 song snippets or video snippets. And in some sense, these represent your journey as a person and as an artist. So we can use these then as jump off points to have a discussion about particular parts of your life. That sound okay?
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
Okay. So without further ado, let me share with you clip number 1.
Yeah.
So, Nikhil, from what we understand, the music of Tom and Jerry, interestingly enough, was a really formative part of your musical journey. So, could you tell us a bit about the impact that the show and its music has had on you?
So a bit of background on that. My dad used to work in Oman, in the Middle East, in Muscat. And he would come see us like a couple of times a year, and every time he would bring back these tapes of Tom and Jerry, these videotapes. So we had a video cassette player. I don't think a lot of the millennials, but the younger generation never seen one of those things. But so we had that. We had a VCP. We didn't even have the record functionality on it. So so we would get tapes of Tom and Jerry. My dad would bring them, and we would just devour them. Just watch them on and on and on and on. And in the process of watching them over and over and over, I would actually be memorizing it. And what you just saw in that clip is basically, it's not just the music, but it's also the actions that kind of sync with it.
Exactly.
So that's kind of like, those are the cues, they're like visual cues that help you remember things. And that's actually what helped me to just memorize this stuff. So I would remember the music because of these, little visual cues, and someone getting chased, someone falling down, something happening, whatever, And back back in those days when they were making music for Tom and Jerry, I think it was there was no compromise on musicianship. These were the top musicians of their generation, top jazz musicians, top country musicians as well. I think some of them. So what I was listening to was, incredible jazz music, and it was just getting into my head and like creating neural pathways, I think. And that's really how I think I developed some sense of music early on. There were many episodes where you hear Tom playing some classical piano and some and Jerry screwing it up, coming and screwing it up. That's that kind of thing. So those were especially, something those are incredibly memorable episodes, and so I would really credit Tom and Jerry with my early music development.
Because it's musicianship, but it's also, like you're saying, it's soundtracking particular actions. It then also ties into some of the work you've done in Bollywood as playback, and also you mentioned jazz and it opening up neural pathways. And I think jazz is also a genre which I think also bends the rules a bit, so to speak, compared to like a pop or a rock. So to have that as your starting point would then perhaps make you feel freer to explore as an artist later on as well. Like it's a really boundaryless starting point in some sense.
Let's just say that later on as an artist, when you are exploring, when you're trying to write a song, for example, and you come up with a strange chord that right in the middle of a progression, that part would not sound completely unfamiliar. It'll be somewhere in the back of your mind that this makes sense somewhere. I don't know where. But that's because you may have heard a part of it in one of these soundtracks of your life early on. So I guess that's what it is.
Now I'll be sharing with you another short snippet of another artist who's been incredibly formative for you. So first I'll share the clip and then we can have a short discussion on that.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Jeff Buckley, you've mentioned elsewhere also, he's been one of your favorite artists, and more than that, I think Grace helped you, and his music in general, I think, helped you open a door at a really difficult time in your life. So could you tell us a little bit about the impact his music has had on you, and how his music also proved to be an inflection point of sorts for you?
So I had actually kind of abandoned, professional music. In the sense, like when I finished with my master's degree, I'd studied geology, and then I had 3 jobs, one after the other, and all of them in the corporate field, obviously. But what was happening with each job was I would reach a stage where I'd be like, I can't continue with this. This is not something that I can do. I want to do. And after having, this, like in the third job, I was in the middle of this third job, and I was now suddenly asking existential questions. Like, what am I doing in life? And right then, there was this friend of mine who, he had a hard drive, and I just copied all his music and I started listening to it. And I stumbled across this name, Jeff Buckley. And then I looked him up, and then I looked him up on Wikipedia, and I saw that, okay, he's not alive anymore, but he had this album called Grace, right? And then I looked down and saw the kind of people who paid tribute to him. And, there were everybody who's anybody was like, Jeff Buckley was someone who either influenced them or was someone who they thought would be, someone on the biggest stage in the world. So, so I started listening to his music. And interestingly, you played Hallelujah, which is, and actually for the viewers who are watching now, is actually a Leonard Cohen song. But this is the most popular cover, which I think got popularized because of someone who sang it on American Idol at some point. Like this cover of Hallelujah. But for me, the songs that really got me were Last Goodbye and Grace, and Lilac Wine. Lilac Wine also being a cover. But the other two were songs that, they did something for me musically. Till that point, I was listening to a lot of singer-songwriters. I was listening to even alternative music, but there was, that edge hadn't struck me until I heard Jeff Buckley. Then when I heard Jeff Buckley, I was like, what's going on there? Like, how is he getting those kinds of movements musically? How's he doing that? And then I looked it up and I realized that he was using alternative tunings, but very cleverly. So, like, for example, in Grace, in Last Goodbye, you can't play that on a regular guitar. You have to actually tune the guitar differently to be able to get those kinds of chords, And when you move your hand across the fretboard, the kind of transitions from one chord to the other can only be done with those kinds of tunings. So I got into alternative tunings. I was, I was like, wow, this is something completely different. And then, of course, it was Jeff Buckley's voice. His approach to lyrics was very surreal also, that kind of got me as well. And there were hints in his voice of Led Zeppelin and Nina Simone and all of that. Things that really drew me in because I'm all about the vocals. I'm all about expressive vocals. I'm all about the melody also. Lyrics for me come a very close second, but for me, it's like an evocative voice and a melody that communicates that feeling in the lyric that comes first. So I've always been drawn to that. And for me, listening to Jeff's music was kind of opening, like giving me a permission of sort, like saying, here you are, this is what can be done. Now go there and try and, get somewhere there. So that's when I got back and just writing music, trying to create stuff like, that was challenging, and I made the decision also to give music, a proper shot. So I basically looked up, okay, how do I record my own music at home? How do I do that? And I realized you have to buy a sound card. Then you have to buy a mic. You have to buy softwares that allow you to record, tracks. Yeah, you need a digital audio workstation. That's right. So I researched all of this. Within a few months, I had managed to get everything together. I started putting down basic recordings and songwriting basically. And I realized that that's what I wanted to do. So then within another few months, I'd made enough money that I told my boss, I'm done. I'm going to go back to Bombay and just explore this at least and see where it leads. And that's when it all changed, and I came back to Bombay and dived back into the music scene.
No, I can absolutely also relate to the point where you said that the melody always comes first and then the lyrics, because I often find myself listening to, say, Tamil songs, Telugu songs, French songs for that matter, and they stay with you even though we don't understand what the lyrics are. So
that's right.
And also, I really think we all have that one artist who opens our minds doors about, okay, this is possible. I can go here. I can do this. And also gives us the courage to go there. And it's really sounding like Jeff has been one of those people. And I was actually going to segue into another inflection point for your career, which I thought was really interesting. So let me share the clip first, and then we can have a short discussion about this story behind it.
Yeah.
खोए रंग ढूंढता खोई खुशबू का पता दिल यादों की गली खोया साथी ढूंढता.
It's a jingle that stayed with me all these years. Really one of
wow, yeah.
And so there's a connection between this jingle and how it connected you to Mr. Amit Trivedi. So could you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, so this was, I think, the first jingle I ever sang. And I was quite lucky because it was the Airtel jingle. So it was quite popular and it went pretty much all over the place and everyone heard it. And it was Amit who he heard it on TV apparently, and he basically made a few calls to find out who sang this jingle. Because at that time he was working on the music of Aisha. And so then he called me up. He got my number from the production people, and he said, you want to come and try the song I have for this film? And I immediately said, in my head, there was a 50-50 moment. I said, I'm not really someone who sings for Bollywood. I'm not a typical singer.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I can do it. And I'm not sure I want to, because I don't want to be a Bollywood singer. Because I just want to do my indie music. And he said, yeah, I understand that. But I think you have the voice for it. So if you want, just come to the studio, listen to it and see. So I went there, and then I heard like he had done like the scratch track for it, and for me it was like, yeah, this is brilliant. This is not at all what you expect from a Bollywood song. It's not your typical song. So I started singing over there, and literally I had the sheet of lyrics in front of me, and I was singing from there. And he also wanted it to be a very informal kind of take, a very raw kind of take. Literally, you see the video. I mean, you see in the movie, the guy is sitting around, he's sitting at a campfire.
The beach.
Yeah. You want it to be as as casual as possible. So he got me to sing maybe just 2 takes through the whole song, and then correct a lot of the pronunciation errors later. So that's mostly how Sham happened. In fact, I mean, for those like the viewers who are here listening right now, Riya Kapoor was also in the studio at that time while we were dubbing.
Okay.
And she produced the film, and she had her phone out, and she kind of was recording me because she wanted to send it to her production people and say, let's get this guy into the shot. And like unfortunately, I remember it was around November that they were shooting that thing, and I wasn't in India at that time. I was actually in Australia. So I wasn't around. But if I hadn't done Australia, I would be the guy sitting at the campfire, playing that song.
But after singing Sham, did the perception of being a Bollywood singer change for you?
Well, it in a way it did, because I started to realize that it was possible for music directors to call me to just get my voice on it rather than get me to sing like some other singer. So that's at least say Preetham, for example, got me on to sing Mere Bina for Crook. And I got Anjana Anjani as well, Vishal Shekhar. So because they were all wanting to try new voices and a different approach. I think actually Amit Trivedi was a big factor that changed Bollywood music at that time after D&D and everything. He brings something new to it. And music directors are also like, let's try something else. Let's put a new voice in there. It was still hard for them to change, but as much as possible, they wanted new voices. So I was in the right place at the right time, I think.
I think we'll move on to the last image that we have for you. So this, of course, is Sayara. It's your latest release. Congratulations. It's a great song. I loved it. My question to you is, firstly, if you could tell us a bit about Sayara and the idea behind the song. And also, I've seen a lot of great content on your YouTube channel, Independent Songs. But how do you feel when you sing like a very commercial song for Bollywood, or like a single, but it's outright commercial, and that gets like maybe 1 billion views or over that, and something that you put all your heart into is received well, but doesn't get the same kind of response? So how do you keep yourself motivated to be an independent artist in such a situation?
Well, okay, firstly, you want to know about how the song came about. So like the way that song came about is the melody came to me first. It was the chorus, which is Jo bhi ho tu meri rehna. So like I had that melody in my head first, and I always I've been writing a lot of my indie stuff, almost all with Pinky Poonawala. So we met up at the Blue Tokai Cafe in Versova, where we normally sit to write, flesh out ideas basically. And I told her, I was like, in my head, there's this visual. Every time I'm singing this, there's a visual of a couple at their first dance. And like in terms of like marriage and as a wedding, I feel that is the most intimate moment of the entire wedding. It's even more like intimate than, say, if you're in the church and the couple is exchanging vows, for example, and they're saying, I promise you, I will, do this. I'll be here in good times and bad. I'll buy you carrots. I know whatever. So like, they're saying all of these things, but that first dance when they're actually, looking into each other's eyes, and that's the most intimate and honest moment, I feel. And it also is like, like slow waltz, and it kind of is like that connection between the two, which is like the sun and the planet, for example, the Earth, rotating around and revolving around their axes. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
That was the movement for me. So for Pinky, it was, she had always wanted to like liken the love between two people to this, to this bond between the planet and the Earth, and the sun.
Yeah.
So, that's where the idea came from.
That's such beautiful thought. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was it. And I think your second question was what?
It is basically, I of course saw like a lot of great content on your channel, but compared to that, you're doing a commercial song versus independent and having the motivation to keep doing independent when commercial songs get way more response because of the kind of marketing that goes into it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing that keeps me sane is that I know how this marketing is done really, with a lot of commercial releases. They don't just put it onto their channels. There's a lot of money that is put into marketing, and especially with, creating Facebook ads and Google ads to push it out to a lot of people, which increases the view count. Some very notorious labels or people have also gone so far as to they just buy view counts, and they'll also buy entire click farms. They have time to kind of add comments to kind of like the videos, and that's just because everyone is doing it, and then everybody wants to look like they are as good as that. And in all of this, it's like no one can even judge how good a song is or a video is just on the basis of likes and views, And in fact, you shouldn't. So just the knowledge of that keeps me sane, because I know, if we had like 5-7 lakhs of, marketing money to just throw at a music video and increases the view count, then we'll also be there, somewhere there. I mean, 5-7 lakhs is like a minimum, by the way, even for like, the so-called non-Bollywood singers. With the commercial indie songs, the budgets are way bigger. So, I mean, I hope some indie singer-songwriters are watching this and also understand that you shouldn't be discouraged by the fact that your video has low views, and it's not a reflection of how good your song is. It's really a reflection of how much money you have. I'm sorry. it's many things, but the money is extremely important in these cases. So for me, with that in my head, I know that the most important metric or the most important factor for me to look at is the kind of feedback I'm getting from even those few hundred people who are messaging in. And if they're telling me that the song is making them feel a certain way, then that's all I want. That is it. That's it for me.
I think that's also more valuable than like 1 billion views, because they aren't real, but here you feel like you've actually created some impact on someone. So
that's true. But never underestimate how 1 billion views can make you feel also. It is quite something.
Nikhil, I also wanted you to shed some light on the Bollywood music scene currently. Of what I've heard is there are certain labels that represent certain artists, and then they ensure that the same artists are getting songs in Bollywood movies, because then they generate a revenue from their live shows. So firstly, is this something that is actually happening in the music scene? And first let's talk about this.
Yeah, it is happening in the music scene. Basically, this started happening about 6-7 years ago, when labels first started signing singers and music directors to them. Before that, they didn't bother. Like, it wasn't part of what they did. The labels at that point were only interested in distribution. Really. Some things started changing in terms of laws, and which basically made the labels rethink their strategy and say like, okay, now if we sign like singers to us and music directors to us, we will just own a way larger portion of the pie, basically.
Yeah.
So that started happening, and as a result, what started happening is also it's only really the singers, who are signed to them, barring some exceptions now and then, but those are very few. Those are the people who get the big songs in the film, the ones that are promoted, right? And along with promotion comes the artist gets popular, they get stage shows. The labels also take a huge percentage of the artist's live fee, and that is true. It's called a 360 deal. Say in international labels, it doesn't happen as much. They take about, I think, maybe 10% or something. Here, it could go as much as 30 to 50%, from what I know.
That's a lot.
The labels have a lot to gain from signing artists to themselves. And that's what's determined. Like, the entire landscape of songs in Bollywood is now determined by that.
But in a way, it's quite unfortunate, because now if someone wants to break into Bollywood as a singer, the only option left is to go and sign on with a label, right? To do it independently is really tricky now.
That's true. And a label already has so many singers under them. So now you've signed on to this label thinking they're going to make your future. But the fact is, if you read any contract that a label gives you, they will never promise you anything. They will only say, we will use our best efforts. That's a line. Our best efforts. And like, what is that? I don't know what best efforts really are. But it doesn't guarantee anything. If the label wants to push you as an artist, they will make you famous. So that's what it is.
Another thing Karan and I both have felt is that your voice, and we love this about you, your voice and its timbre, if I may use the word, is really distinct and unique compared to what the stereotypical male Bollywood voice sort of like the pigeonhole it falls into. However, Karan and I are both kind of the opinion that we don't think Bollywood has leveraged this uniqueness of your voice fully. It hasn't fully utilized what you can bring to your music. And I'm wondering, do you also feel like in that sense, the music you've done for playback for Bollywood, do you feel like it's underutilized, your voice, its quality and your musicality?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? If it were up to me, I would, sing certain songs a certain way. I would, I would process them a certain way. I wouldn't throw in melodyne and autotune and just, correct the hell out of every note. All that contributes to, what you hear in the end, So even if your voice is somewhat different in timbre than, someone else, unfortunately, a lot of the mix people, like the sound people, basically, who are behind shaping the sound, will try and kind of standardize it to what is being heard. And the process of doing that is, number one, they put like a level of autotune under the voice. Then they use another software called Melodyne, which kind of fine tune
the pitch
more. Now it takes a lot of the human element, because your voice is not that perfect, right? You don't hit every note. You don't hit everything. So it dehumanizes the voice, makes it like perfect. And then in the end of it, there's a lot of EQing that happens, like equalization. For those who don't know, it's like you have the voice which exists on a frequency graph, and you manipulate like parts of it so that some things are highlighted and some things are subdued. You give it more air, for example, make it sound more hissy, more nasally, more whatever. You can change those things. And it seems like there's a template for everyone that's been slapped onto everyone's voice, and it's kind of brought in line with everybody else. So I'm sure there's a lot of playback singers who have exceptionally good timbre and they have great vocal expression and everything, but in the end of it, it feels like there's a practice of getting everything to what they think people want to hear. That's what's been happening. And I think with indie music, that's changing, because a lot of the indie artists don't care for much of that. So they just, here's my voice. It's naked up front and no reverb and no new tuning. So, it's changing what people are hearing. It's changing what people are expecting, I think, which is a good thing.
So Nikhil, I was seeing some of your live performances and I noticed that in a few of your songs, you had your eyes shut. And as someone who performs live myself, I've noticed that because of the environment and especially the concert environment, it's very difficult to feel each song. So is there something that you do to get in the zone for every song? And by the end of the entire set, is it very emotionally exhausting for you?
I mean, it is something that I do, you're right, to kind of get into that particular song. What you're essentially doing there is you're removing the visuals as a mode of stimulus. And you are only relying on the sound. And it's like the sound also takes visual shapes in my head. You know, the low, the high, the dynamic and everything. And so like that's how I kind of see it. Like in my head, I'm seeing the sound, and I'm this ebb and flow and dynamic. I'm actually visualizing it when I close my eyes, and the emotion also of the song. Of course. It at the end of the show, you do feel a rush. And you do feel like a slight actually I feel a high a real high because when you've been in a conversation and it's been a very emotionally charged conversation, at the end of it there is a rush in your head. It can either be completely draining or it can give you a real high, and for me it usually gives me a high.
But also, like, if you're performing your originals and they come from an honest place within you, so to put yourself through it every time you perform the song can be taxing, right?
No, I mean, I've reached a place where I can touch upon those things, but I don't have to necessarily relive everything.
Okay. Nice. Interesting.
You can remember what it was like just for that brief moment, that moment there, and then you slip into another song. So you've gone past that. I mean, if it was affecting me, everything was coming in, then I would just be an absolute wreck. I wouldn't be able to perform live.
Absolutely.
In that case.
That's true.
So you've got to be able to just detach enough that you know where you are in the present. You're in front of this audience who has maybe bought tickets to watch you perform live. It is a performance. You're a professional. So you have to draw upon your experiences, your songs, and kind of deliver that, but not get too affected by it every single time.
That's true.
I've
also noticed that you've composed a lot of your originals. Did you ever consider becoming a composer for Bollywood?
No. I mean, I compose pretty much all my originals, but the thing is with film and with ads and all of that, there's a whole process, and it usually involves putting your ego in a box and shoving it somewhere, underneath, because you can create like the best verse and chorus and then, give it off to the producer and say, my heart is here in this song. And they'll just take your heart and because they'll say, it's not working at all, please change it. It's like they want to change everything. And also, it's not really I tried out doing some ads once, but it's like you feel it should be a certain way, but the fact is the client who's paying you the money doesn't feel that. So you have to basically let go of your ego and everything.
Also, a common thing that I've heard is that the brief usually is make a song that sounds like the last hit song of Bollywood. So that can be very annoying for like composers who want to create original stuff.
Yeah, it is very true, actually.
This whole thing about composing with authentic voice also comes from the fact that a lot of our art is animated by the living we do in our day-to-day experiences, right? And it comes from our day-to-day experiences and our memories. And I'm also wondering, after getting to a level of popularity, getting to a level of fame, do you think it impacts your ability to have these day-to-day experiences that animate your art? Like, say, for instance, you said you were on tour. if you're on tour for long periods of time, away from family, away from friends, or say for instance, people are trying to relate to you, but you question their motives behind why they're trying to get close to you. So I'm wondering if popularity and fame has impacted your ability to create art in a way, or to have the day-to-day experiences that animate art.
I think it definitely would. In fact, if you are, say, if your main inspirations have been about the simple life, or simple, like people, everyday people, and you've been writing, say, songs about that, just a very simple kind of relationship or love or this and that, and if you've now broken that connection with it because you're really rich and you don't have like the people who come to you now, the friends who come to you might have other intentions rather than just being real friends with you. They're there because you have a lot of money and everything. It can make you doubt a lot of things. It make you negative. It could change things. And I know I've heard of people who, for example, would write only about heartbreak, and then one day they found the love of their lives, and they get married and everything, and then they stop writing about heartbreak anymore. I think for me, I do have the ability to kind of to go back and really remember what a moment felt like, and what this person was like, and what was happening then, and just draw upon those things. So that's where a lot of the stuff I write about comes from, because it's not as though I'm constantly experiencing romantic love every few months. It's not that, it does come from a place in the past for me, and I'm not actually speaking that popular, famous, that that the sense of the grounding of the reality of this world would be escaping me. It's not that. I'm still pretty much connected there. The day I get as popular as, say, a Badshah or someone, and I won't be able to just walk on the streets, that would, I wouldn't like to be in that position, actually.
In fact, I think you found a sweet spot where you're like, you have the right amount of fame that doesn't interrupt your daily life also. But this has been a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Nikhil, for being on the show and being so generous with your time. We had a great time chatting with you. Would you have any parting words?
Thanks for asking relevant questions. And like, you guys did a lot of research as well, which I really appreciate. Well, I just want to say that I'm actually really glad that we've put COVID mostly behind us. I'm just fingers crossed that it stays that way. And I'm glad that we can actually have a conversation about a new song that I've released, and about live shows that I'm playing, rather than what am I cooking now? Because it's great that we can have these kinds of conversations now. So I just want to say that I'm really grateful for where things are right now, and I hope people who are watching this also appreciative of the life, this kind of second chance we've been given at doing things. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are all looking at a brighter future. And to our viewers, we hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you did, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. Share this with your friends and family. We'll see you very soon in another episode. Lots of love. Bye.